Since we started AutoEV, it would be fair to say that one of our favourite electric cars has been this, the Kia e-Niro. In fact, it's been everyone's favourite electric car. So much so that despite it now being 4 years old, it's still the UK's second best selling electric car. And it's easy to understand why. It's got a reasonably decent sized battery which gives it very good range, it's very efficient, it's practical enough, it's comfortable, it's very well equipped, and it offers good value for money. In fact, it's been one of those cars that I kind of default to. I've taken my family to Cornwall in it, I've taken them to Scotland in it, I've even recommended it to friends if they're buying one. In fact, this one actually does belong to one of those dear friends. In fact, the only criticism I've really had of the e-Niro has been the fact that it's, well, how do I put this politely and without Josh hearing me, it's a little bit bland looking. Well, now there's a new one, and as you can see, it's anything but bland looking. Welcome to this week's road test review. Welcome to the new Kia Niro EV, and as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we get on to this week's road test review of the new Kia Niro EV, yes, it has a slight change of name, which I'll tell you about in a second. It is, of course, that time where I ask you to make sure you're subscribed to the AutoEV channel. Once you've done that, make sure you then press the little bell button, because that way you'll be notified of when our next video goes live. Once you watch the video, if you do enjoy it, make sure you give it a thumbs up and leave us some comments, good or bad. Let us know how we're doing. So like I said, it's easy to understand why people loved the old Kia e-Niro. It's just one of those annoyingly good cars that just kind of gets on with it and does everything really, really well. Well, of course, everything except kind of look exciting and bold. But I sort of understood that because it was at a time when maybe people weren't taking Kia and Hyundai particularly seriously. Bearing in mind how long it takes to get a car onto market it takes 7 or 8 years from sign off to actually get to market. And they were probably being a little bit cautious. They don't want to scare people away by making something too bold and too avant-garde. Well, of course, now we know how well the e-Niro has sold, and as I say, it's probably the only thing that was kind of holding the car back from greatness was just the kind of conservative look. And as we've seen with Hyundai, that boldness is coming with the likes of the Ioniq series from Hyundai, and of course now the likes of the EV6, and obviously now the Niro from Kia. But here's the big question: have they thrown the baby out with the bathwater in their strive to become a little bit more interesting and a little bit more bold? Have they ignored what else made the Niro so good? Have they not progressed it on enough to stand comparison with what is out there at the moment, which is to say some very, very good and very, very talented competition? Well, of course, the only way that we're going to find out is by putting it through an AutoEV road test and delivering our verdict. So why Niro EV? What was wrong with e-Niro? Well, it's got something to do with search engine optimization. When you Google something, other search engines are available, of course, it makes it easier to find and easier for this to come up. So it's just called the Niro EV now. And like the previous car as well, it is available both with combustion engine in mild hybrid, plug-in hybrid, and of course full electric form. But let's get on with the important part, which is the way it looks. Now, it's going to cause a little bit of controversy. I have no doubt about that in my mind, but that's a good thing. And I happen to think this thing looks brilliant. I love this bold new look that Kia have got going on. These signature DRLs that they've got running around here with the headlamps inset in here just looks fabulous. And like I say, it doesn't really look like anything else in the Kia range. Well, I say that, but of course you've got your kind of this digital tiger nose that they seem quite keen on promoting. Still no idea what digital tiger looks like. But there's almost a little bit of the soul at the front. You know, that kind of grumpy kind of stormtrooper look the Stoll's got? I quite like that. I love this sweep of metal that comes round here, and then obviously it's the same down in there. It's a slightly darker finish on the level 2 model. This is a level 3. We'll go through trims and specs when we come to pricing, just the mid-level car. And then you've got this bonnet which is set slightly further back and this kind of inset in the front of the car. The bold Kia logo that we've seen now filtering through on the other cars. This nice kind of diamond kind of pattern, this rhombus kind of pattern that goes on the other side of the number plate. And then of course you've got the grille down here with some cooling, and then obviously some of your LiDAR and your radar guided kind of cruise controls. Charging flap is still at the front, thankfully, but it's now centered in the front there and just nice and easy to get hold of. And as I say, I think it just looks phenomenal, this new car. As I say, it's very bold, it's far from conservative. Yes, it's probably going to have a number of people who don't particularly like it, but I think they're going to be few and far between, because I think this looks ace. Now inside profile, you can tell that it adopts the same style as the previous Niro. It's that sort of small kind of compact crossover style, which obviously is what sells, and it makes it very, very practical, as we'll see in a second or two. Less sort of like bold in this colour. We'll go on to that kind of C-pillar section in just a second. It's difficult to see because I've got a dark grey car here, but you've got kind of contrasting wheel arch trims here, which then have this little section here that kind of runs up and sweeps around there and down. So on a white car, that would be all kind of black, you know, or a lighter coloured car. You'd see a much bigger contrast between that bit and that bit. And again, it's got that kind of visual thing that just breaks up the kind of side of it. There's no real kind of strong feature lines through the car, in fairness. As I say, it makes up for it in other ways. Again, you've got these sort of like really smart sort of like side turn indicators here, which kind of mirror the lights at the front, which I do like. All cars come on the 17-inch alloy wheels, so irrespective of the trim level you get, that's the wheel design you have with these kind of aero covers, and they're quite nice and they're kind of easy to kind of wash when you keep them clean. You've got the kind of integrated roof rails on the side as well, which is handy. And this is the bit I was talking about here. This kind of C-pillar at the back, which reminds me of the kind of the Golf, the Mark IV Golf, where they had that really strong, distinctive kind of C-pillar shape going on. Now you can have that in the contrast colour, so you can have it the same colour as that. So, you know, on a white car that could be black, or on a red car you can have it be black and just make it really stand out, make it a feature of it. This particular one, it's body coloured. I don't mind the contrast one. I think it looks quite interesting, although I have to say I quite like the spec of this car, this kind of nice kind of muted kind of grey. It looks quite smart, it looks quite sophisticated, and I think it really, as I say, it stands out without standing out, if that makes any sense whatsoever. You get privacy glass on the 3 and the 4 trim levels, not on the 2. And just talking about this kind of C-pillar again, there is actually a bit of a vent that goes in there and then comes out at the rear by these rear lights to aid the aerodynamic efficiency of the car. But let's take a look around the back where you'll see that a bit closer. Yeah, and again, at the back it's as bold and fresh, just like the front is as well. You can really see these kind of the way these rear lights kind of stand out from the body, let that air flow through that vent there, and this kind of boomerang shape going on, which is great. I absolutely love the way they do that. But they push right out to the side so they don't impede into the actual boot lid itself, which is quite practical. And you get a nice big Kia logo at the back there, the handle up there, reverse camera in the right kind of place there, although again it is quite easy to get that a little bit dirty. Might have been better putting it up there or something. Rear wiper. Niro badge there. Titanium kind of coloured skid plate down at the bottom. Not that you're going to be doing off-roading with this car, because it is just a single motor car. There's no dual motor available like you can get with the EV6. Although in saying that, it has got quite a raised ride height, so in terms of if you were, you know, taking it on skiing holidays or something, a set of all-weather tyres on it, you'd probably have more than enough that you'd need. And then again, these kind of lights down at the bottom, they just follow that nice kind of theme, like the daytime running lights and the side turn indicators, and then across the back, the full width spoiler with its integrated high level brake light. This car is as bold and as interesting to look at as the last one was boring and uninteresting, and I think Kia have absolutely played a blinder with this car. What do you think? What do you think? Did they make the right decision to go a bit more bold with the car? Do you prefer the more conservative look of the older one? As always, let us know in the comments down below. Now again, along with all the other attributes the last car had, being practical was of course its main one. And this one is no different. The boot is slightly bigger. The previous car had 451 litres, this is now 475. Although oddly, once you drop that 60/40 rear seat, it goes up to 1392 litres, which is slightly down on the previous car. So maybe that's got something to do with sort of like the way the car slopes in at the sides or back or something, I'm not sure. But let's just talk about this area here, because this is brilliant. Now normally I'm not a fan of these flimsy kind of parcel shelves. Normally I'm not a fan of them because they just look a bit incongruous and they just fall apart. I don't really like them. However, this one's pretty decent because when you take it off, which obviously you do by these elastic straps, excuse my fumbling around here, it can just lie flat in the boot, so you've got somewhere to store it. Or you've got this massive area underneath here that it can go into. That's brilliant, I like that. And talking of that, there is a massive area underneath here. Cable storage, vehicle to load socket, which again we'll talk about later, and your 3-pin domestic charger plus your turn mobility system. That is massive. However, it gets better because that boot floor is in its highest position. So you can actually lower it down to there, which is even better because that means that whilst even the standard boot still takes the 4 suitcases, the 4 AutoEV suitcases, you get even more space when you drop the boot floor. So what we can do is that, there's our medium, there's our large in there, which I can pop there. One of the cabin bags just sits down at the back there. Another one on top there. Camera bag, rucksack, that goes down into there. Golf umbrella there, full width there. And you can still get the parcel shelf back onto its fixings. That is brilliant. How much more space would you need? Now the Ford does get a power tailgate, the trim level 4, but you really don't need it because you do get this nice big chunky handle. Pull the boot down and just close it. But as I say, how much more space do you need? Well, here's the thing. You do get a little bit more space, as we shall now see up at the front. Because despite being not a dedicated EV platform, because as I say, remember, it comes with a piston engine equivalent as well, with hybrid or plug-in hybrid capabilities, you do still actually get some storage underneath the front bonnet, which cars, dedicated EVs such as the ID4, Volkswagen ID5 that we tested last week just don't have. Now, it's not huge, it's about 20 litres, but it's enough for an extra charging cable or for that vehicle to load socket, or if you're out in somewhere like this and you're out walking your dogs, you can sort of like put a pair of muddy boots in there, or the, you know, the dog's lead or something like that. That would fit in there and it's just all covered up. It's just brilliant. Rear accommodation. Well, what do you expect? It's great. It's absolutely fine. It's very, very similar to the last car. So again, if you're coming out of that car, if you're trading up, you'll find this is a very, very sort of like similar in terms of its interior space, which is, you know, again, quite a good thing. You sit quite high in these back seats. They're almost kind of stadium style, so you do get a great view forward as well. The driving seat set up for myself. So again, myself at 5'7", 5'8", I can sit behind myself very easily. I've got plenty of leg room. Foot room, as we tend to find sometimes on Kias and Hyundais, a little bit tight under the seat, but as I say, I do sit quite low in my driving position, but just be aware of that. You get this similar style kind of ET head type of front seat, so you've got the kind of integrated handle at the back, but that does mean this is slightly kind of harder kind of plastic. I suppose it wipes clean easily when you've got kids banging their feet against the backs of the front seats, so there is an upside to that, I suppose. USB-C charging ports in here now. Now of course the last car didn't have that, which is very good, so you've got the ability to charge iPads, and I quite like them being mounted up here because it means they're not getting, the cables aren't being tangled about in feet down below here. And you've also got a socket in here as well, if I can figure out how it works. Yeah, I think you slide it open. Yeah, well anyway, there's a 3-pin socket in there, which is great. Flat floor, a flat floor as well, so again the person in the middle's got plenty of space for the feet. 2 vents there. Storage, well, it's okay. I'm not going to get my big water bottle in the door bins at the back. They are shaped for like a slightly smaller water bottle than mine, but there is small door bins. Elasticated, the kind of airline style rigid mat pockets on the backs of the seats, that's all right. Now you do get the fold down armrest as well, which does have another 2 kind of cup holders there, bottle holders, which is pretty good as well. But yeah, I just can't see as I say, really any fault with this whatsoever. Headroom's fine. You don't get a panoramic sunroof in the Niro. You can get a sunroof, you do get a sunroof on the trim level 4, but it's more of a traditional style one that's just above the front two passengers. So, you know, I quite like a big glass panoramic roof because it really opens up the interior kind of space, it floods it with light. That would have been quite nice to see, but I mean, I am nitpicking at that point. The seats themselves are comfortable, there's enough support, you don't feel your legs are being pushed up. It's just good. Now, like the outside, the interior of the previous e-Niro was not particularly exciting. It was well equipped and well built and comfortable, but it was very bland to look at, and in the face of much newer competition it just kind of lagged behind. Well, I'm pleased to say the interior of the new Niro is as bold and exciting as the exterior is as well, which is fantastic. Now, you've got effectively two screens here along the dashboard. The dashboard itself, this kind of interface, is very, very similar to what we've seen in the EV6, but again, like the exterior, it kind of treads its own style as well, which is nice. And it's just about, well, it just kind of suits what the kind of style of car that it is. So you've got two main screens here. You've got the one in front of the driver, which is configurable to a point, which is quite nice because you can determine what you want to see in the center there. And you do that via the buttons here. So if I was to, hang on, if I press this button here, you can have, you've got your speedo here, your battery level, your charge or power meter on that side, your efficiency down there, your miles to go. So it got all the information that you need at a glance there. But you can change that so the center is obviously, you know, a speedo, or you can have it where it's a compass, and if you're using navigation, it'll tell you kind of which way you're going. Tyre pressures, or you can have it so that it shows you the different, you know, if you're using the distance cruise control, you know, you can alter the difference in there, which is quite nice. So that's, you can configure it slightly. Moving across to this screen now, this is a 10.25 inch display. This is what you get if you choose a trim level 3 or 4, and as I say, this car is a 3. If you go for a 2, there isn't a 1, I don't know what they did to the 1, then it's an 8-inch screen, and it kind of appears a little bit lost in this area here. So I'd make the jump to the 3 or 4 if you can. The graphics that you get are much slicker and much nicer, and the fonts that they use are much more pleasing on the eye, because the fonts that they used in the last Niro I think were last used in the 1984 Matthew Broderick film War Games. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the last time I saw the fonts from the previous car. Anyway, the new one's much better, it's much slicker, it looks really, really funky and nice. And this screen is just, we've seen it before on, you know, Kias and Hyundais, let's say the EV6 and the Ioniq 5 and stuff. It's just really slick and easy to use. The navigation itself is nice, big, bold and clear. This is as pleasingly wonderful to use as the Volkswagen ID3, ID4 and ID5 screen is woeful. I mean, it's that much of a difference, to be honest with you. It's just fast, intuitive, easy to get on with. But if you don't, then obviously you've got Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard, which is nice. It's not wireless, it's wired, but hey, you can't have everything. But yeah, this is a great screen and interface to use. Steering wheel's nice, pleasingly round. Again, it's like the EV6 wheel, it's the same style. The kind of two-spoke design with just the right level of buttons on them, and they are physical buttons. You've got the star button here, which I think is one of your, you can program what your favourite thing is you want to change, and that, when you press that, it comes up here. So that's quite cool. This side here is more kind of media, volume, Bluetooth. This side's kind of cruise control, driver assistance. We'll talk about driver assistance when we're out driving, obviously. Column stocks, slick, feel good, feel sturdy, lights on left, wipers on right. This swooping door pull here is just lovely. Nice, crisp, chunky window switches, mirror controls there. And I like the material they've used on it. It is plastic, but it looks like a kind of forged carbon, which I really like. You've got the driver mode button mounted on the steering wheel now, like you do on the EV6 as well, so that's nice and easy to get to with your thumb. And then just below the screen, you've got this switch pack, which we've seen before on the EV6, and I really, really like. It's not, there are two physical buttons on it, so these rotary dials at the side here, but the functionality of this switch pack changes depending on what you want. It's really clever. So at the moment I've got the climate control system on, and each button does something. You don't get haptic feedback, you get a little beep, excuse me, to tell you what you've done. And then this one on this side will adjust, you know, the temperature control. I've got it synced both sides, so it's dual zone climate. Or that wouldn't be for passenger. But by pressing that button, oh, they now change to be your media buttons. And then this control here, this one over here, becomes the volume for the radio and media, and that one's the tuning. And then you can just map, navigation, your track select, radio, media. Really slick, really clever. I like that. I love the way it flicks between the two and keeps the kind of, it means you don't have to keep constantly going into the screen to change something if you don't want to, you want a quick change. Or it's there. Brilliant. Connectivity wise, you've got two USB ports underneath here, an A and a C. There's a 12-volt socket if you're really old fashioned there for charging your mobile. But on a 3 and a 4 you get a charging pad, a wireless charging pad, which is handy, and that goes in there. The only thing I would say is on the previous Niro, this was a big storage bin. And you don't get that now, it's like a full console. So they've done away with some storage, which was a really handy thing, which I liked about the last car. You know, you can drop your sunglasses in it. Even my wife had a small handbag, she could drop it in there if we were going somewhere. It was just handy. You've lost a little bit of storage there now, which is a little bit of a backward step. But even so, the way it all works is nice. You've got your EV start button here. It retains this rotary dial for the transmission, so park in the centre, reverse, neutral and drive. Heated seats, which you get on the 3 and the 4. You get ventilated seats on the 4, which are these two blank switches here. And then your heated steering wheel on the 3 and the 4, parking camera, auto hold, and your electric handbrake. You do still get storage. The door bins are okay. They'll take my the sunglasses. They won't take my big water bottle, but they do fit in this centre. My big coffee flask and my water bottle goes in here, and there's still a tray behind, and then there's a bin down in there. You've also got a good sized glove box too in here, and I quite like this little ledge here, which again is touching a nice material, and this glows blue as well, and you know, it gets dark. I like that. The materials used are brilliant. They're really solid. You get this nice soft touch, almost kind of rubberized texture up on top of the dashboard. Again, maybe a little bit too much piano black for my liking, because you can see all the fingerprints that go on it, but again, it feels solid. You know, it doesn't move. There's no rattles, no squeaks, nothing. The 3, like this one, you've got this half cloth, half, well, they call it vegan leather, but let's be honest, it's vinyl. And a lot of manufacturers do this, but then they give you a leather steering wheel. Kia don't. It's the same material on the steering wheel, so well done, Kia. So, summary. Interior, oh, I didn't talk about comfort. Really comfortable, nice adjustment of the seat. You've got electric adjustment on the driver's seat on the 3. If you go for the 4, you get electric on both sides, and obviously the 2 is manual on both sides. Nice seats. They hold my slightly larger frame really well. There's enough distance, you know, there's enough padding in this squab. There's enough under thigh support. You've got a really nice straight ahead driving position with a wheel that adjusts for reach and rake. Everything works, you know, in terms of, you know, the variety of different sizes of drivers and driving styles. There's very little you could complain about. I didn't mention the 2 paddles behind the steering wheel, but we'll see that when we drive it, because that's your brake regen, which I've always liked the way that Kia and Hyundai do that. So yeah, in summary, what do we have? Well, we've got an interior that is exceptionally comfortable, very well equipped, which is the same as the last car, but now a lot more interesting to look at. Your trade-off is a little bit of loss of storage, but for the basis, on the basis that you get an interface now that looks as well as it works, I'm willing to give that up. I really like this interior. I think this works really well. Now, the one thing that they haven't changed over the previous car is the battery size, which is still a 65 kilowatt hour one. There's no 39 kilowatt hour option like you used to get in the old car. I'm not saying that's not going to come out, but for the moment it is just this 65 kilowatt hour one. And that's fine because it always was very efficient, it always did give a very good range. The range has actually gone up slightly to 285 miles on the WLTP cycle. And we know, and I know from experience, it's a genuine 250 mile car, irrespective of conditions. This car is very efficient and works really, really well. However, what they haven't changed, in fact, if anything, they've gone slightly less, is the charging speed. It's pegged at 85 kilowatts. Now, I think that's a bad move on the behalf of Kia. Now, if you were charging up from, say, a 50 kilowatt charger, which is what you sometimes stumble across at a petrol station or whatever, then it takes over an hour to go from 10 to 80%. If you go to a 100 kilowatt charger, then that drops to 45 minutes. But I still think I don't think that's good enough, if I'm honest with you. I'd like to have seen them put the charging speeds at well over 100 kilowatts, because that 10 to 80% charge, to me, should be done in round about half an hour. Because if you can get it at round about that half an hour, those kind of times where you're out and about or whatever, and you just need a quick top up and things, half an hour's fine. Once you go beyond that, it starts to be a bit painful, I think. So I do think that is a little bit of a downside with the new Kia e-Niro, is its charging speed. Sorry, Niro EV is the charging speed. I'd like to have seen them just up that slightly. Anyway, if you charge it from your 7 kilowatt wall box, then you are looking at a charge time of just over 9 hours from empty to full. So we've been very surprised by the way that Kia have changed the way the Niro looks, both externally and internally, and it's all the better for it. Are there any surprises waiting us for the way it drives? Not really, but that's not such a bad thing, because the way that the old e-Niro drove was always very good. It had a lovely sort of blend of comfort and performance. Okay, dynamically, it wasn't sort of like pin sharp handling, but that's not really what we were looking for with the Niro. It just needed to be refined and comfortable and practical and have a ton of speed about it that made motorway driving or longer driving not any much of a chore. Or if you were trying to squeeze past slower moving traffic on kind of little back roads like these, it needed to do the job well enough. And I'm pleased to say this one does exactly the same. It's 201 brake horsepower, so like the battery, the motor's power hasn't changed, and that means a 0 to 60 time of around about 7.8 seconds. Now you've got to remember, that sort of power level, that sort of performance, that's pretty much what you used to get from sort of like, Golf GTIs, like a Mark V Golf GTI. So to get that in sort of like a family kind of carry-all like this, well, that's pretty decent. And it does it effortlessly. The refinement has always been something I've loved about the Niro. It was always so much better than the Hyundai Kona, and again, it's exactly the same here. The refinement is just as we expect to find. There may be a little bit more tyre roar on coarser surfaces, but we're talking about a minute level of difference. That's all. It is still, in my book, a really, really refined car to drive. Now, in terms of other things such as steering, brakes, the weight of the controls, it's excellent. Everything has the right feel to it. Nothing feels, you get some cars that have like a really nice weighty steering, but then the brake pedal's too sharp. The weight of the controls doesn't seem to sort of like tie up with each other. That's not the case in the Niro at all. Of course, as I say, it's not the most dynamic car in the world, so there is, you're not expecting you to string a set of apexes together as effortlessly as you would in, say, something like a Porsche Taycan. But in terms of being a family car, this accomplishes it really well. There's very little body roll. I mean, yes, it's a slightly smaller and lower car than the Volkswagen ID.5 that we tested the other week, but you pitch the Niro into a bend and it certainly doesn't wallow around like that car felt. You know, it's got quite a low centre of gravity, and it tends to just feel like it's really digging in, and it's, you know, it's actually quite pleasant to do that. Now, that beeping noise is the lane keep assist. I went too near the white line there, and that's worth talking about. That's the only thing I would say is there's certain, I've just found out, you know, there's certain controls you can control from the steering wheel. There's others you've got to delve into the screen for, and that's a little bit annoying as far as I'm concerned. I'd just like them all to be like on one button or a couple of buttons where you can scroll through it and turn them off. There's some you've got to go into the screen to turn off. You've got to wade through a few menus to find them and turn them off. That's a bit annoying, I would say that. Otherwise, there's very little not to like here. The brake regeneration is, again, like we've come to expect from Hyundai and Kia, and it's done via these two paddles. So, and you go on the left paddle, you're taking it off, there's a little minus symbol, so the car will coast. So if you're up on sort of like motorway or A roads, you can wind the brake regen right off, so it has a nice sort of like coasting ability. Or on the left paddle, you can add it on and you can really ramp it up. In fact, one pedal driving, nice and easily. I really like that. It's a really nice system, and okay, it's nice and easy to use via the two paddles. In fairness, MG's is quite good as well with the little rocker switch, the KERS button, where you can just add it on or take it off as you see fit. But it's nice the fact you don't even have to take your hands off the wheel here. They do that. I do like that about them. It's the same with the drive modes. The buttons now up on the steering wheel, I think it used to be down here in the centre console, and they've now added it up here. And when you go into sport mode, I tell you what, the throttle response really sharpens up. It really picks its skirts up and absolutely throws you down the road when you're in sport mode. But as I say, it's not what the car's about. Dial it back to normal, and actually the car has just got a nice feel to it. It just feels right. The other mode that there is Eco, as you'd expect, where everything kind of gets a bit dulled down. Oh, traffic lights. Everything gets a bit dulled down. Throttle response is quite heavy. I don't tend to go into bother with that. But there is a fourth one that I alluded to, and that's called, if you hold the drive mode, it goes into snow. And then obviously that's obviously for when you're in the snow, I would assume. And it just sort of like, I think it adjusts the torque, and it adjusts the way that the power delivery happens, and therefore you'd kind of question your need to maybe have something like a big SUV with four-wheel drive if you had something like this with the snow mode and you just put a set of kind of, you know, winter tires on it through the winter. I'd be interested to see how well this could acquit itself, because actually off-roading or being in the snow in an electric car is pretty good, because obviously you've got that low down torque, that instantaneous torque, and that's what you need when you're in those situations. So I like that, that's good. The drive of the car in terms of drive position, the comfort and all the rest of it, well, it's just difficult to fault it, if I'm honest with you. I sit in a really nice seat, it doesn't pinch me too much here, it's got the right level of support. The squab, whilst it's not adjustable, is of a decent length, so I've got good under thigh support. It just grips me at the back of the knees, which is nice. The driving position itself is dead ahead. The wheel adjusts for reach and rake, so you've got a good driving position. Mirrors are good, they're easy to see out of. Vision over the back, you're sort of like three-quarter back vision. You've got quite a thick C-pillar, so maybe that's, you know, maybe one area that's slightly disadvantaged. And the other thing that's sort of missing, which I would have liked to have seen on here, is Hyundai and Kia's little blind spot cameras. And as I say, Tesla are now doing it as well, and I really like that. So when you click your indicator, you get an image on the Hyundais and Kias. It's on the dashboard here. On the Tesla, I think it goes on in the main screen, and it just shows you what's in your blind spot. I really like that, but it's not on the Niro, and that's a shame, because I think that's one of those little driver assistance features I really like. But to summarise, in terms of the suspension quality, we're on a bit of a rutted road here. It's nice, it deals with the bumps well, it deals with undulations well, it doesn't feel pitchy. There's a little bit more bounce, I would say, from the rear end. Sorry, that's me again. There's a little bit more of a bounce from the rear end, and it's funny, my friend Josh, whose car you saw at the beginning of this episode, he's always found that as well. There's just in his old car, the rear end just maybe seems a little bit more stiffly sprung and just has a little bit of a bounce in it, and I can just feel it in this car as well. It's not too bad, and it's certainly never something that my daughter's complained of in the back of a Niro. But yeah, other than that, I can't really fault the suspension, which brings me neatly on to the rest of the car and its summary. I can't really fault it. As I say, if you're coming from the previous car into this, if you're upgrading your Niro into an e-Niro, into a new Niro EV, there is nothing not to love about this, because everything that you like about your current car is here, and they've improved it. They've tweaked everything just to make it that little bit better. And if you haven't come from a Niro and you just want that car that you can get in and get on with very, very easily, doesn't take a lot of learning, doesn't take a lot of sort of like getting used to, and you just want it to just work, this is it. The MG ZS, which is probably this car's main rival, is a car that's like that as well. And I've got to give credit where it's due to that car, because I do love the MG ZS. But this is just better. It's difficult to quantify it. It's just, everything feels just that little bit, it feels that little bit more quality. And I don't mean that just in build quality, I mean quality of engineering. Everything just feels that up. That little step up. It's a little bit like, you know, when you used to drive around in sort of like Ford and Vauxhall, and you jump into, let's say, a BMW or an Audi, you go, oh yeah, I can see why it's got a premium price, you know, they are that little bit better. Obviously the differential there is kind of gone now, because they are the kind of the normal volume cars. But that's what I mean, the jump, there's just that little bit of a premium difference between the MG and the Kia. And that's where I think the Kia absolutely knocks this out of the park. This is a brilliant car. It really is. And it's just brilliant because it just gets on with the job and does it really well. I'll tell you what it's like, and you're going to think I'm a bit mad here. But you know when you got a good tradesman, like a plumber or an electrician, and they come into your house, and they don't stop for a cup of tea, they don't suck air through their teeth going, oh, that's going to cost you. They don't make any funny comments, they don't do anything, they don't sit there and waste their time. They just get on with the job quickly, quietly, efficiently, and get out your way and don't charge you too much money. That's what this car is. It's like a really good tradesman, if that's any kind of analogy that you can get on board with. That's what this car is. It's just good. Now, in terms of pricing, you know, it's still a relatively good value for money car, in the way that a near £40,000 car can be good value for money. If you go for a level 2 car, the entry level, trim level, then it starts at just over £36,000, and the range tops out with the trim level 4 at just under £42,000. This is the mid-level 3 that I've got, and that's £39,000, though as tested, this car's £39,895 because it's got the heat pump option as well. So bear that in mind, the heat pump is an option on the car. So as I say, it's kind of right for the marketplace that it's in. It's more expensive than some cars, it's cheaper than others. I think in terms of the value prospect, this mid-level 3 is probably where I think the best compromise is, because you get the best sort of combination of really well equipped and decent sort of value for money. Once you go above the £40,000 going for the level 4, you are tantalisingly close to the Kia EV6 entry level, the Air, and you start to question whether or not you would make the jump into that car. So I think keeping it under the 40,000 bracket is where I'd be at, which is this level 3 trim. Bear in mind, of course, it's not just about price that we talk about. You've got to think about running costs. And again, you've got Kia's phenomenal 7-year warranty, which is standard across the car as well. And also in terms of its efficiency and its charging, its range You're not going to be spending a huge amount of money in terms of charging the vehicle up, because you get so much range out of one of these and they're so efficient, it's pretty decent. So your overall running costs are very, very good in that sense. And then the last thing to discuss is residual values, because the previous car is phenomenal in its residual values, and I don't see it changing with this car. So from a running cost point of view, this is good value for money, I think. Well, in terms of competition, what are you looking at? Well, MG ZS EV, that's probably the biggest competitor for this car. It's a similar sort of size of car, offers a similar amount of practicality. Of course, you now get it with the bigger battery, the extended range car, which matches the range that you get from the Niro, and it still offers exceptional value for money. There are areas where obviously it's not quite as good as the Niro, I'm sure, but you know, it's still a great value for money proposition. And from within its own brand, its own sister group Hyundai, you've obviously got the likes of the Kona. Now, we think that's a great family car, the Kona, although it is a little bit smaller, but it's still very, very good to drive. You can look at other practical cars that aren't sort of like the crossover style, such as things like the MG5 Estate, or Volkswagen's ID3, Citroen's EC4, if you want those traditional sort of 5-door hatchbacks. But then the biggest competition they're going to have this year is from, again, MG, with the fabulous value for money MG4. But as I say, remember, that is just a normal sort of like 5-door family hatchback. It's not the sort of crossover style that the Niro is. So here's what we like and what we don't like about the new Kia Niro EV. We like its range and efficiency, its performance, its refinement, its practicality, the improved styling inside and out, build quality, and the warranty package and residual values. We don't like there's disappointing charging speeds. Turning some of the driver assistance systems off is a little complicated, and there's no smaller battery option at the cheaper price point like there was in the old car. The old Kia e-Niro was a well-loved car by many of you, myself included, and it continues to be so because it's still the second best-selling electric car that's on sale in the UK market today, and that's despite newer competition come on board, especially people like MG, who just kind of kill it in the value for money stakes with things like the ZS. But what made the old e-Niro so well liked was the blend of what it was capable of. It was a bit of a benchmark car, I think, because there was very few things out there that offered the range that it could. You know, it was a 250-mile car all those years ago, when others nowadays still are struggling to match that. It was efficient the way it drove, it was practical, it was well built, it was well equipped, it was comfortable, and it just pretty much did everything that a family could need it to do. So have they done it? Have they taken what was a brilliant car and moved the game on? Yes, yes they have. In fact, let me be very, very bold and very, very clear about this. In terms of this market sector, this compact crossover all-electric sector, which is very popular with you buyers out there today, I don't think there's a better car under £40,000 in that sector than this new Niro EV. They have absolutely knocked it out the park with this car. In fact, I think this is the new benchmark by which all others must be judged. It is that good. It's annoyingly good. Thank you for watching another episode of AutoEV. As always, please remember to make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Once you've done that, press the little bell button that's down below, because then you'll be notified of when we put another video up. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you do give it a thumbs up and leave us some comments, good or bad. Do you agree with me? Do you love the new Niro EV as much as I do, or do you think I'm absolutely, as we would say in Scotland, havering? Let me know in the comments down below. If you're into your social media, then remember we're across all those platforms as well. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, give us a follow there as well, because every little bit helps us. And if you're thinking to yourself, my goodness me, I really have just enjoyed this, and what I need to do is waste the rest of my day watching a silly old Scotsman talk about electric cars, then stick on our YouTube channel, because there is now well over 100 videos, including twin tests, used car reviews, and our electric icon series. All that remains for me to say is thank you once again for watching. I'll see you again soon. So, you've watched our video. It's now my job to tell you to like and subscribe and press the little bell button to receive notification of when our next video is uploaded.